testing the audio to see if it's working now.
Testing the audio.
Can you hear us?
Bueller.
We're waiting for Chase to see what he thinks here. I was gonna say, that's what I have. Somebody just told me that it came up.
Still good?
You still?
Sweet.
All good?
Before you can, I just ask everyone to make sure that they're speaking directly into their mics. Because it is an issue even when the audio is working.
Is this like executive session where we do have to wait till 7:14?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
One
One more minute. It's 7:14. We'll call the meeting back to order. Back on new business, agenda item property acquisition regarding the property located to the south of and adjoining the old Maple Leaf Motel lot that the city currently owns for purposes of acquiring that property for the new substation.
Does Glenn want to give us an update on
Yeah,
that?
I met with the landowner. He's open to selling the land on the terms that we had discussed before. So if that's the direction we want to head, then we can finalize the property acquisition as quick as we want to do it. So the other part of that is we would be selling the Maple Leaf Hotel land north of that.
To pay for this.
That's the way we pay for that. So it basically is a break-even proposition.
Well, it's break even on paper.
That's what we paid for.
Right now.
Well, but long term, you get a commercial lot on the highway instead of occupying it with a substation.
Right, which is, I get.
Or,
what we wanted to
yeah, additional
avoid that.
additional property tax, additional sales tax. So yeah, I mean that came up as an opportunity. Obviously, there are some concerns around that piece. There are some people currently residing on that space that does have basically what's remaining of our affordable housing, as that is something that we've highlighted as a goal in our strategic plan to increase the number of affordable homes that we have in Baldwin, and this obviously contradicts with that. So I think I could speak for myself, and other council members can chime in that while this does make a nice opportunity for a substation that makes that original lot open for commercial and future Baldwin growth, I think it's a good crossroads to revisit our commitment to affordable housing in Baldwin and coming up and getting creative with new ideas on how to do that. I know some people have tossed around some ideas here and there, and I'd like to open it up to kind of discussing that in the context of this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken with Rob regarding the old what I call the old soccer fields up by the cemetery. So he's going to be checking to see how much and what the city would need to do for engineering wise to get sewer into that area, because currently we have water and electricity. But that is one of the only parcels we really own that is large enough for any type of housing. So if we want to get serious on affordable housing, in Baldwin and incentivize somebody to do something, that lot is probably the most ideal lot that the city currently has and controls to be able to do something with affordable housing. So we have not gotten that back. Rob is, again, working on that. But as soon as we have those numbers back and how much it would actually cost to get sewer over into that area, I'll be bringing that back to the council.
Yeah, and I want to just add on to that too, real quick, that is the challenge to developing affordable housing in the community and that is the development, luring a developer and incentivizing a developer to come in and take on a project that probably wouldn't bring the same returns as a normal housing project would. So I think that is incumbent on us to find creative ways to incentivize. We already have RID, we have NRP, and I think we can go beyond those two programs to see what we can reach down and find.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll just add that, we discussed this in executive session and other times without disclosing what we talked about. I think from my perspective is, I'm not interested in, displacing anybody from where they currently reside. And so that's a huge concern. I think there's, 4 people that still reside in that location, at least the information I was given. 4 still occupied. So I think what, in my mind, what changed my mind, first of all, it is the ideal spot for this substation. I think we'd talked about this from the beginning as being ideal spot and freeing up, frontage road, commercial space, kind of putting this in an area that would be more hidden. And, with the current proposal, it would be a property cost neutral event, where we talked about the previous alternative, it would be another $100,000 or $200,000 to make that move. So, it is the best spot, but again, it is going to cause some impact. So in my mind, and the information I was given is that the property owner has been looking to sell for a while, and it's only a matter of time before that happens. In fact, I'm under the understanding that they're on short-term leases anyway. So, I believe it's inevitably going to happen. Don't know when. And I think what we're doing is, obviously maybe accelerating that somewhat, but I don't think we're changing the outcome at all of where this was going to go. So in my mind, that, if those two things weren't true, I wouldn't be for pursuing this. So that was my thought.
Okay. So with that, do we have a motion?
Is this motion just to allow Glenn to go ahead with this, or?
Yeah, to enter into a contract with the property owner for the purposes of acquisition of that property. Located at what address?
Well, it's several addresses.
No, it's one overarching.
Oh, it is? Okay.
It's got an address. 130.
130 Baker. 130 Baker Street.
Okay, I move to allow Glenn to talk to the property owner and do acquisition of the property at 130 Baker Street.
Been moved.
Second.
Been moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item is the lease agreement with Blackjack. So as we've spoken about in some committees, and most recently in the Finance Committee, Blackjack Group, as we currently know it, is not doing well. They will not be around by the end of the year. So They had previously approached us, the city, to work out a deal with them to where the city could potentially ultimately purchase that property to keep it a historical landmark in our community. So, however, we don't have the funds to purchase it. So the council has discussed doing a lease agreement with Blackjack for 12 months to cover their payments on their loan, to give us some time to figure out a financing and mechanism for that property. And so what the council has before them tonight is the lease agreement with Blackjack to lease that property for 12 months with the option to purchase it for what they owe on their loan at the end of that 12 months or any time prior to. And this has already been approved by the Blackjack board. So with that, is there anybody here from the public like to speak to this agenda item? Yep, Stu.
Stu Young, Building and Zoning Inspector. 125 of 06, the County Commission in Douglas County, Kansas, Lawrence discussed efforts to clean up the illegal dump site at Blackjack Battlefield site with Keith Browning. I would like to ask if anybody has any information on that, how that turned out, or how did that work out?
I have no idea.
So there is established documentation that there's an illegal dump site out there. What became of it, I do not know. So I'm just sharing this information with the council to help you with your decision moving forward.
Okay.
Any questions for me?
Where exactly on the property?
That was,
I've actually been out there. It's really wooded.
it was,
Very.
I personally have seen it. I was going to buy that property about 20 years ago. I've actually seen it before it was covered up, but the Douglas County Commission discussed it on 125 of 06. And I don't know what action has been taken or not taken. So I would leave that with the governing body to look into that and make your decisions based off whatever information you can find with that.
One more
Thank you.
question. Is it an open dump site or was it covered?
No, it's
Well,
right up creek bed.
At the time I saw it, I was actually bought property in the area a long time ago. There was very large ravines that, like many places in Kansas, that were filled in with various things that was part of the doing, in the day. But I don't know exactly the outcome, and I don't have a copy of the minutes of the meeting from Douglas County Commission. So I would say that the governing body could possibly look into that and help you with any decisions moving forward. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak to this agenda item? Go ahead. If you could just state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Susan Davis, 1301 High Street. We just have a question at this point.
Uh-huh.
What all does that property entail? Does it include the cabin and everything?
Yeah.
And the ruts are separate?
Yeah.
Yes.
The ruts aren't on this
So
property.
it's just the parks?
Correct.
Thank you.
How many acres?
40 acres.
40 acres.
Any other public comment? It includes the farmhouse that's currently on the Battle Blackjack Park. Correct.
Yeah, the Pearson House. And the trails.
Yep. The whole entire Blackjack Park.
And there's a couple other structures. There's a barn back there. I went hiking back there. That's how I knew about that. When he said that, I was like, there is a dump site. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, just to reiterate, this is the purpose of saving that property to keep it in public hands within our community. Just because we have people at home listening, so
Backwards. I was thinking over the log cabin. You're talking about
the
Battlefield Trust,
correct,
Right.
yes,
not the Blackjack. Okay. Right. So,
the
Pearson
battle,
House would
yeah,
be- yeah.
huh?
Is
Yeah.
included. Yeah.
the battlefield, yep. So, as you will see in the lease, it already outlines the purchase price as well, $257,000. So
So is that monthly? Sorry, Julie.
I had a question about the monthly payments that we're going to be making, and that doesn't go, I mean, we don't get anything out of that.
interest only. They're paying interest only.
Okay, but I'm talking about if we buy the property, none of that lease payments are going to be counted.
No, because 257 is what they owe, and their payments right now are lease payments, and that's an interest only. There's
no principal.
The principal doesn't change. It hasn't changed.
I see, okay.
So this just buys us time to figure out by the end of next year whether we just walk away, find something else, another buyer. It just extends this going back to the bank immediately if we don't do this.
Right. Okay.
You're okay. Usually I didn't shut down public comment technically, so you're good.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're good.
Helping me too with some.
Well, I wish I had known this part so I could have been better prepared.
You're okay.
But wasn't there a grand fundraising that was done that had raised almost $1 million or something like that?
So they didn't, I think they got it pledged to them, but
Never actually.
they didn't get it collected. So,
And there's no way to pull from that
no, because
specific.
some of the main, I don't know all the details, but I think some of the pledges fell through and some of the major pledges fell through, which has led us to here. Anybody else from the public like to speak to something? If not, we will shut down public comment and open up the council discussion.
Yeah, so I mean, just call it what it is. What you're buying is time.
Correct.
So where does the $1,500 come from?
I believe it'll come from general fund, right, Glenn? The 15, yeah.
It'll reduce our reserve
All right,
that we forecasted by that amount.
Yeah, you would have to commit to replenishing that in however way you ended up doing it. So I'll start. Obviously, that blackjack site is dear to Baldwin and very important to Baldwin. And I as I understand it, once that property becomes foreclosed on or however it happens, it can be sold to anybody for anything. So nobody, I think, has to preserve it as a historic site. Somebody could put up a horse ranch, or whatever. There's nothing restricting, as I understand. Am I right?
Correct.
That anybody
Right.
could just purchase it as it's just land.
That's my fear is
so,
that
yeah, so
it'll get
that's-
sold and become private property.
So that alone justifies my vote to at least buy some time. Now, I have no idea how we're going to possibly fund that. I know some ideas have been tossed out, but I think I'm comfortable with at least buying some time here because that is a very critical consequence facing our community if that site is sold privately and it is lost. I also know that it has some opportunities for some federal recognition. I don't know that it would ever get a congressional vote, but I think it could possibly get a presidential distinction as a historic site. And I know some efforts have been made for that haven't been completed yet. So I think it is kind of in limbo as a private property that it is responsible on whoever cares about it to do whatever they can to keep it the Battle of Blackjack site. So with that, I'll pass it on.
I think there's a lot of people that don't realize the historical significance of that property. I'm out there a lot, and just this last weekend I was out there and there was a group of tourists. There were probably 20 people in a group that were just walking around. They were reading the pamphlet and wrapping their heads around everything that happened on that property. So it's definitely a tourist attraction. I think for it to become private property would be tragic. We have a lot of historical value in that. So I think, you know, at $1,500 a month, if we can preserve that, at least buy some time, it's worth it.
It's the first organized shots fired in what would become the Civil War. I mean,
Exactly.
it's significant. And I know, all the major historians, Doris Kearns Goodwin and those folks will say Fort Sumter was a start, and that's a fine thing. But I mean, people were losing their lives and getting injured over the cause that became the Civil War long before that, and it was happening right here in Baldwin City. So that was happening at this specific property. So, little quick recap.
I'll just add that this lease does require us to keep it a park and keep the south portion that is currently, or that was put back to preserved prairie during the lease terms. So within this lease, it does require that essentially we can't change it from a park or from that preserved prairie on the south end.
So will we be required to what they were talking about, the illegal dump? Are we responsible to clean that up?
I mean, I'm not aware that, I believe Stu said that was from 2006. I mean, that's 18 years ago.
I've walked all over that park and I've never even seen that.
It's very minimal. I mean, it's something that I feel like last time I saw it was a couple years ago, and it's something that a few folks with pickup trucks and a gator might be able to clean up. I mean, I saw a couple refrigerators. There's just some general metal around here. The coolest thing out there is an old tire that a tree has grown through. Have you seen that? It's like halfway up. It's been there a while. So that's been a dump site for a long time. There's some old like beer and pop cans that you could tell that date how long it's kind of been that. But it doesn't look like it would be anything significant that wouldn't take more than a day or two to clean up.
But yeah, we would be required for all the insurance, maintenance. I mean, this is us essentially taking over the property.
Okay.
So are there any plans to try to, I mean, we just gonna enter into this lease and then show up at the end of December and have to make a decision basically based on where we're at right now? Are we gonna put anything formal together to try to go figure out someone else to purchase this or run this, or?
I mean, I think once we get this done and we know that it's in our hands, I would like to start having some discussions with Senator Moran and those at Washington, D.C. to see what the steps would be to make that a federal park.
A federal park would require a congressional vote.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's what I would personally like to see. But again, this was the more pressing side to save this than.
Right. I'm just afraid if, and that's going to take more, more than a single year to get that done. And you might not even have any good indication of whether that's even possible in a year, at that level.
No, I mean, I worked with Senator Moran on our trail application for the United States government. And he responded to my phone calls, responded to my emails. So I'm confident we can get somewhere, or we can at least start the process. Now, I don't know how far down the path and how long that will take us, and I completely agree. It's going to be a work in progress. But I think this property warrants, trying to put in that work and effort.
Would that enable more grant access, or what's the financial benefit of getting that done?
Well, I think, ultimately, I think the federal government would potentially purchase that and make it a federal park at that point, to where they maintain it, they preserve it, all that stuff. I mean, that ultimately is, I think, what I would personally like to see with that, because they're just more better funded for a property like that.
So what do we estimate that land to be worth on the open market today? 40 acres.
I mean, yeah.
Well, 40 acres at $250,000 makes it what, $60-some $100 an acre?
Nah.
As sold, but I'm just saying as comparison.
I mean, what's the going market for that type of land?
I mean, you're looking at
10,000.
$10
At least.
to $15,000 an acre for land right now around Baldwin.
So if nothing else, I mean,
It's a good deal.
the way you look at
Yeah.
it is, if we can't get anything done and it's costing us too much to operate it, we've made an investment that we could certainly recoup our costs. at a future date if that's the worst case scenario.
Well, but if the lease requires us to keep it a park and then we sell it, that would violate the conditions of that.
No, we'd have to purchase.
We'd have to purchase.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Got it.
And,
Yep.
And then, a period of time where, it costs to run it, we can't afford it. We can't find anybody else to do it. We still have, we aren't making a poor investment with the city's money.
So, okay. So it is a true lease then. It's not like it's not a deed restriction on like if I bought a house with a loan, I could still sell it.
Yes, this is just a true lease
Got it.
at this point. Again, this is just to give us some time.
That's all I had.
Any other comments or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to enter into a lease agreement to purchase Blackjack Battlefield.
To lease Blackjack Battlefield.
That's not what's written in
Lease-
my notes here. Sorry.
Lease purchase.
A lease purchase agreement. Yeah. So I move to enter into a lease agreement for Blackjack Battlefield. Forget my /purchase.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item, which I think we have some folks here to discuss on, is the sale of real property, Baldwin City Lake. So I'll just give a brief synopsis of this before we ask for public comment. This was discussed in conjunction with this lease and potential ways we could pay for the purchase of Blackjack. We discussed it in a finance committee on it, and it was kind of decided to go ahead and bring it to council to start the discussions to see where the council sat on the city lake. So am I missing anything, Scott?
No, I mean, there's some other things that we'll talk in committee reports, but if we're trying to move into more community solar, we're probably gonna have to do some land acquisition potentially as well. And so having an economic development fund with funds in it allows you to be able to do that type of stuff. And if you own real property, like we do, there's value to it, but it's not equity you can do anything with, And so the discussion was between the Blackjack and potentially, more solar, and just building the economic development fund back up. It was discussed, and the reason it's an agenda item is there's some real value there that we could theoretically pull out of the ground, bad pun, but and use it for some other things.
I'll add too, I think it is worth mentioning. I did read some comments online before I came to the meeting, and I think it is worth mentioning that this has been, the City Lake has been on this body's radar since day one, since I was elected. This is my 6th year. This was on our strategic plan. What to do with the City Lake has been an ongoing issue and an ongoing I've tried not to think about it personally, and kind of until it got really a situation where it kind of got forced to be a part of more of a different conversation, which is what it is now. It's in conjunction with this Battle of Blackjack property. But this has been, all the strategic planning sessions that we've had, all the work sessions where we've talked about this. I think we even had a work session on the City Lake. This has been discussed for a long, long time. And I think it's probably a good time to mention some of the challenges that come with the lake and restoring the lake back to what we all kind of remember it to be. Glenn, I think you'd kind of mentioned at some point, and the only reason I'm pointing to you is because I don't know if everybody who's up here was on the council or elected at that time. Somebody came out and looked at that property and said what it would take to restore that, if I remember right, to fix the spillway, to dredge the lake, to... Oh, it's from the state.
Some great
Okay.
funding, and Fish and Wildlife people came out.
Okay.
with That was about 4 or 5 years ago now. We did
Do you remember about what they estimated it to be?
It's a lot. Let's put it that way. I don't
I thought,
Talking to hundreds of thousands of
I was
dollars.
gonna say, I thought for some reason, I thought the quick, easy, cheap fix without dredging and all that was like 70-some thousand, but the proper fix was around 200,000 to 300,000.
Easily, and that
sounds
was,
right.
that was about 5 years ago, so I'm sure the cost has gone up since then, so, yeah.
Okay.
So that's the challenge. Do you now? So let's say we had a new commitment, a new reinvigorated commitment to restore the lake back to its pre-broken spill well pond succession days, and I think so that's potentially $200,000-300,000 there to put toward that project. There's just leaving it as is, and then there's trying to flip that to purchase something else that the city can enjoy. And I think that it spells out the struggle of what we're dealing with here with the lake.
So with that, is there anybody from the public like to speak to this agenda item? Just ask you to state your name and your address for us.
Becky McMillan, and 1102 Dearborn. And my whole thing I love is outdoor education and history both. And so both of those places are very special. I've hiked all over them. I've canoed, kayaked, fished, everything in the lake. I think most cities would look at that lake and think, what a treasure. Why in the world would you let this go? Why in the world would you just dump it? When if it had been fixed in the very beginning, it wasn't that serious, it could have been preserved. And I'm sorry to say, Baldwin has a little bit of a habit of letting things go too long. And then they don't get fixed, and then it's too late. And that lake has such a history. I'm the one that put something on Facebook. I know, I did it.
I didn't see yours actually.
Oh, good. But
Hey,
it was
you know
the
what? I
answers.
just appreciate you coming to the meeting.
Yes.
Talking to us.
Well, because I don't talk behind people's back. I want to know the truth. And I had a feeling that maybe that was your plan, that, one would pay for the other. I love the Battle of Blackjack area. That has got the greatest trails. It is such fun to walk. And I can still do it. And, those areas are spatial, but the other has even more possibilities. And I'm not one of your sports fan people. There needs to be outdoor education for other people who don't do the sports, who do the hiking. Catherine Kelly's trail was let go. It was a beautiful trail that walked through that area, and there were birds, there were everything that you could imagine. It was just let go. It was just abandoned. And it was built by the Scouts, I believe. And the Scouts have used that area. I used to tell stories there. I led singing groups. We did all kinds of things with the Scouts. We have always used it for a million things. And I just can't see letting it just go. I know the price, I know that, but I've also heard, we have a good friend who's a Corps member, who had been a Corps engineer. He said, it would not cost that. It would not cost that to repair it. You need to ask around and see. The city could have probably done it in the very beginning before it was so serious. And I would say more, but I don't know exactly where you're going with this and what's happening, so I'm not prepared. I just heard it this morning, so my mind was, on other things today a bit. But do you have any questions? I don't, that's my main thing, is that don't let this treasure just be dumped to be built by beautiful homes all around, perhaps, maybe. Yes, then the lake would be a lake again, and they would love it. Well, then your city doesn't have that beautiful lake. Yes, we do have the state lake. It's not maintained like a county lake is. We kayak it all the time, but it's pretty bad a lot of places. And it doesn't have the areas to picnic, to get together, to do things with scouting groups and all that. It's a different animal than the city lake is. Just think about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Yeah.
I'm still Susan Davis. And I just found out when she posted on Facebook. So I'm not sure how you would choose which one to save and which one to sell. There's so much in common with both of them. They were both started by the early pioneers before statehood to this area. Some of you may or may not know my great-great-grandfather, that's his house, he built it. my father was born in that house, so I have a special tie to that. And so I'm obviously going to root for that one first. But when William, Robert Hall's father, came over here, it was about the same time as the Jardins came here. And, you know, at the bottom of Spring Creek Lake is what? A brick mill, where the house, some of the bricks that are in the Prairie Commons at 6th and High were made in that mill. So it's a hard one to choose. And so I think there's a lot you could do. You were talking about federal grants to purchase. I think it could all go together. Obviously, I would hate to lose the lake, but something to consider in the big planning, and I would love to be part of that planning for the house. But anyway, I just hope you consider the overall history of the town and the draw that it can bring with tourism. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the public like to speak to this agenda item?
I'm Danny McMillan, 1106 Dearborn, or 1102 Dearborn. I thank you for
She was wondering if you moved.
yeah. Who knows? But anyway,
That's where he's been.
I commend you for wrestling with many city issues and stuff. But I hate to see the old lake just go. It was quite a place when I was a little kid. Family reunions and everything. Of course, you know, memories are memories, and that's it. And I understand what you're wrestling with. And I didn't know about the blackjack thing. I highly recommend doing that. I mean, I can't think of two better things to keep and spend money on. I do think the lake could be repaired a lot easier. I don't know what all the regulations are if you rebuilt the dam or anything, but it's worth saving, folks. And I don't know, you know, I don't deal with your budgets and everything, but I highly recommend trying to save it. Second thing is, it used to be our water source,
That's right.
and that's very important. How do we know that someday we might not have to go back there and use that water source? I mean, the old Kansas River is low. The city of Lawrence controls everything we do. And that lake might become very valuable for water sources again. And that's all I got to say. And I thank you for wrestling with it. But I would love to have both things.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the public like to speak to this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and open up council discussion. So I think we've been also wrestling with this this predicament that we're in, where we have two important areas to the community that we are trying to preserve and save, and it's been difficult. It's been a lot of discussions and meetings and disagreements and agreements, and let's just see where everybody sits. But I agree. To some points, I did think of something today. I was just looking at the map of that City Lake area, and I don't know the feasibility of this, but that lake's around 60 acres total property. If we divided it and at least kept the lake portion where all the picnics and stuff are, and then we sold the east side where there's nothing over there besides the Frisbee golf over on the open area, maybe that could get us enough funding to go ahead with the blackjack park and still save the lake. Again, just throwing that out as that was something that came to my mind, because I mean 25 acres around in this area will go for about what we need for the blackjack. Now, what that does do is the solar farm, and purchasing land for the solar that we has discussed in finance committee. But I also measured the area that we currently own just west of the entrance by our current solar farm, and we have about 25 acres there Now that would mean clearing some area. There's a creek that goes through there, and it's treed up, and so you'd have to clear trees to put a solar farm there. But we do have 25 acres still in that area that's basically wasteland that we can't build on. But
Well, I think-
might be able to hold solar. So I'm just trying to come up with out of the box thinking.
Yeah, I think that's what we need to do, is really think about different alternatives that we can do so that maybe we can save both of them.
Let's talk timelines. I don't think there's any imminent decision that would need to drive a decision on the lake. And since we passed the lease agreement, that buys us some time on that. So, so it seems like it's sudden, but there will be no decision anytime soon while we think about ramifications and alternative. Just want to make sure everybody was clear. We're not looking to make a decision here anytime.
We have to have a serious conversation about what it would take to turn that lake into something that people remember enjoying. You know, I think, what is it, probably 3 feet deep right now? I mean, honestly, what would it take? And I don't know that the answer is a big state funded, what can we do? What can we do to repair that dam and get it filled back up and dredge it and have somebody come in and do some dirt work and fill it back? I mean, it'll fill back up. It's a spring.
Pay them money.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all about the budget.
No, but how much?
Well, I mean,
We have to have that answer, I think, before we make an honest.
So do you
decision.
suggest, I think we owe it to the citizens to at least explore this one more time and get an estimate and figure out what it would cost to, we put a lot of importance on reserving history with Blackjack, and, this is obviously has a lot of historical significance with the community as well, so.
yeah, I mean, we had an engineer look and to address the engineer looked when we were addressing our water issue and when we were negotiating our water contract, because there is, 8 to 10 wells in that area that used to feed the water source here. But Baldwin City decommissioned their water treatment facility. So that's part of the reason. So what we did back then, and I think it was 2018, 2019, is we had an engineer look at that water source under that ground and see if we could rehabilitate that and bring that back online to help eliminate some of the costs we were seeing in the rise of the water costs that we were seeing from Lawrence. And what the engineer came back and said is that aquifer underneath there cannot support our city anymore. So in order to, back then, it was about $15 million to put back on our treatment plant and get everything back going to where we had our own water source again. So we did discuss the water underneath there and had an engineer look at that. And I think that was about the time when we got the information on how much it would cost to fix that lake. And again, $200,000 to $300,000 just keeps popping in my head of what that engineering firm told us. So I know that we were told later on by an excavation company that about 70-some thousand would fix the dam, but that fixes a certain portion of it, not all of it, because you'd still need dredge to add some depth into that. So just some information for the council. But I agree, Scott. I don't think we're in a hurry. I mean, with passing the lease, we definitely bought ourselves plenty of time to continue to have this discussion, and it may be something to have BG take a look at that lake and give us a written proposal on what it would take to bring it back to what it was, and then we can bring that back to the council to consider and see how we could possibly fund restoring that lake.
I'm just thinking outside the box here as we sit in an actual WPA project, but when that was our water source, was that a new deal thing, getting water from point A to point B out there? Could we tap into some historical?
No, I think that predated that. I forget what.
There were those old brick pump houses out there. Our property joined the lake. I know quite a bit about the area, but there used to be these old round pump houses. I don't know if any of those are still left. I think maybe one is.
And I guess for the public listening too, because I did get some calls today, this is the time that the council gets to discuss things like this as a body. So we have to put things on the agenda to even be able to legally discuss it. So it's not that, we're trying to push anything through or anything like that. It is, the only time that the whole body gets to get together, get ideas, take those back to committees, work on them, bring them back to council and all that. So unfortunately, it feels like it sometimes gets sprung on people, but it's just part of the public process that we're dealt with. And so,
Well, public comment is more active during council meetings than it is committee meetings.
correct. It is. So if the council's okay, I'd like to go ahead and have Glenn reach out to BGC, how much it costs to have that engineer study or estimate completed to see what it costs to fix the lake. And then we can bring that back to the council when it's ready. Is that what the council would like right now?
And I think if we could also, we heard some use cases, to me, it's, we're going to get a number to fix the lake. What does that do? Who's going to use it? And what's it going to be? So it needs to be, it's an investment. Are we investing it knowing that these groups want to do X, Y, Z? Or are we just going to hope people use it again?
I mean, I could argue that nobody uses it anymore because of the condition that it's in.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. Yeah, but the question is if it's fixed up, are people going to use it? What are they going to use it for? And in what differentiates it from the state lake, right? So there's certain things that you can do there that you can do out there. There's certain things you can't. So it's when we spending money, we want to understand. We just want to know to the best of our ability why we're doing it and what we hope to get out of it. And if we've got some clear use cases, just like I'm assuming that when they put Frisbee golf in there was a group that said, we're going to use this, every weekend or whatever. So it was done, I think, to satisfy a need. And that's all I'm looking for, is just some of that. So when we get the number, we go, well, that's what it's going to cost to go be able to do these things again. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's going to have to be part of the discussion, because I don't think this discussion will stop here once we even get that number. And let's say it is 250,000. You still wrestle with the fact of how are we going to pay for that? How are we going to pay for blackjack? And
Right.
So that's got to all be part of that discussion.
It's going to come down to, you can't do everything. You have to make choices.
That's right.
And so you need to know at least what choices you're making and why.
I go back to the affordable housing conversation too. I mean, affordability is, our strategic plan, we don't spell out affordable housing specifically. We say affordability. And if you could parlay that property into saving yourself the land acquisition for a solar field and making the next 30 years of your electric bill lower, that makes things more affordable, and you get to kill two birds with one stone by preserving the property. So I don't know. I mean, it's a complicated topic, and there's a lot of different ways to think about it. And I think, thank goodness we have time.
Okay. So we will work on that, and we'll be bringing it back at some council meeting, hopefully in the next couple, probably the early December council meeting, I'd assume. Right, Glenn? You think about 30 days is what it'll take?
It might just, last time we had this look, I believe it was Larkin Engineering that looked at the water. So they may have something on that, so.
We'll dig back in the files and try to find it.
What they can refresh on that. It's good. The cost will all have changed in the past 5-6 years. I remember that was a while back.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the MIH resolution. And Glenn, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a resolution to support affordable housing.
The Moderate Housing Income Grant, which I believe this is Mike Burns and his company. Of course, he owns Auburn Pharmacy. They own that piece of property east on East Baldwin, just north of the highway there. And I think last year they did apply for the same grant. So they did not get it, probably because we still had our previous grant was still open. We were working with tenants to homeowners. I believe they've successfully completed that project. So they don't give you two grants at once, so you won't be able to. So they want to compete for this grant again. And again, this is adding more affordable housing. I've talked with representatives from Mike Burns' company. It looks like they're looking at more duplexes, fourplexes, and those kinds of affordable housing needs that we have on that piece of property that's been sitting vacant for a while. I think they also want to do some commercial in front, but this grant is all about the housing. So with our incentives with the RHID and with these incentives from the state out there for moderate housing, these are very competitive grants. We've got them twice, I believe, in the past. But he's got a really good developable piece of property. There are utilities all around it, and so they're willing to go again. He's got a person who does grant writing for him, and we've been working pretty hard with him. He's coming up on a deadline here pretty soon, so they need a resolution of support for us, just like they did last year.
Is there anybody from the public like to speak to this agenda item? Seeing none, council discussion? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
The resolution number is 2024- what?
I don't think it hasn't been assigned yet.
Okay.
I don't think you don't actually.
You don't have to state the number.
Okay. Well, I move we pass
MIH
the MIH
resolution.
resolution.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next agenda item is the livestock ordinance. So this was brought up to me quite a while ago, and I'll be honest, it's my fault. I dropped the ball on bringing it to committee. I think we might have talked about it one time quite a while ago. It was brought back up to me again by a citizen who wants to keep a horse at their property overnight. We've talked about it numerous times in committee. Committee split pretty much. So that's why we're kind of bringing it here. Chief has concerns, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, that, you know, with no animal officer, that's a concern that his officers would have to deal with these larger animals. To outline the ordinance a little bit, and I don't remember the setbacks, but it is a minimum of 3 acre lot to have
100 feet.
minimum 3 acre lot to have a large animal. It has to be away from another property, neighboring property by 200 feet. We kind of really outlined it off of, I think, Bazer's or
Tonganoxie.
or Tonganoxie, somebody. Early on, we did talk to Baker, Chief Baker, and he indicated that he would be okay with dealing with these animals if we were to get a call from him. But essentially, the committee was kind of split on it, so we wanted to bring it to council and discuss it, see if there's something else we could do, and go from there. So that's why it's on the agenda. Is there anybody from the public like to speak to this agenda item? Seeing none. Council discussion?
So in committee, we talked about, it's 3 acre lots. So, I mean, this is only affecting a handful of citizens in city limits. And I think in here, it's only a limit of, if I remember right, it's only 2 animals. And it has to be 200 feet away from a dwelling. So I think it will have minimal impact while satisfying the needs of some of our hobby farms in town.
Yeah, and that's what we talked. Glenn did bring up one point that, maybe we have everybody do a conditional use permit that wants to have a large animal. The committee asked me to do a little bit of research on that. I didn't find anybody that required that. We found quite a few ordinances from other communities. I think Spring Hill, Tonganoxie, and a couple others that have large animal ordinances out there, but I didn't find anybody that required a conditional use permit for them. So, so that was something else that was discussed also in committee. Yeah, I mean, I agree with Susan. I mean, the hobby farms, the smaller tracts of land are becoming more and more, people are wanting to do mini farms or micro farms or whatever they're calling them now on them. I can barely keep alive my tomato plants. So, but anyways, so we'd like to get some feedback from the council on thoughts.
Well, if somebody had 2 horses on 3 acres, that isn't enough, is it? I looked up and it said that for 1 horse, you need 1 to 2 acres.
Yeah.
So, and if you have to be 200 feet in the property, and if there's a house on it, then that limits a lot of the area that you're going to be able to use.
Yeah, and so I used to have a horse. My kids didn't like the work that went into them, so we don't have the horse anymore. But we did. We boarded our horse, and I know, they keep them in just little boarding, areas, and then they let them out to run every once in a while. I'll be honest, Julie, I don't know what the industry standard per se is on that, but I do know that there is some sort of standard. And I think specifically if you're grazing that animal versus using bales to feed that animal, I think there's a standard on how many animals per acre that you should have based on the area of the state you're in. But again, I'm not a farmer. My dad is, but I'm not. So.
For me, it's. Sorry, I guess just it's about the neighbors. It's an individual like kind of basis for me. Like would the neighbors throw a fit? That's kind of if you have a cow mooing all the time, and I don't know. That's what comes to my head first. I don't really have an opinion one way or the other on it. If other communities our size do it, and we haven't read the news, that's something. It seems kind of harmless, but I don't know. I think it's. You could have that one neighbor that's just like, I'm so sick of this cow or horse neighing. I don't know.
And the smell.
And the smell.
Yeah, I think that's what the 200 feet was for, is to keep that. I don't remember, but.
Do you know how many 3-acre or larger lots we have in the city? Any idea?
It is only a handful. I mean, it's like
Less than 10, I think.
yeah, mainly up in Signal Oak area. Those are all 3 acres up in that area. And then a couple around on the peripherals of the community. I feel so, not a ton, and even less that would probably want a large animal. I think my thought was, as we discussed tonight, land continues to go up in value in Douglas County. So a lot of these families may not be able to afford 20 acres, which is, Douglas County now makes you have a 40-acre parent parcel and you can only divide it once. And so you're seeing, most of the land for sale now is 20, 30, 40 acres, which can be pretty pricey. So if you have a kid that wants to be involved in 4-H or whatever, and they want to raise a sheep and, involve themselves in the county fair, their options are limited. And so I guess in my mind, I was just thinking, okay, if you have 3 acres in town or 4 or 5 in town, why deprive that child of being able to be part of that community as well?
So I know some of the houses out there are on septic tanks.
Correct.
And how does that work if you've got a couple of horses?
So
Because the laterals
it depends on where their laterals are, if they're in the front of their house and they're back of their house where their pasture is. But I don't think you're allowed, and I don't know because I don't know the state law specifically. I don't think you're allowed to keep livestock over the top of your laterals.
right. That's
So,
what I was thinking.
so again, that's what you have the restrictions in the ordinance for, and somebody might have 3 acres, and due to where their laterals are and where their utilities are, they just can't conform to that ordinance, so they can't have them. That's, trying to, when we try to look at these situations, you try to protect everybody you possibly can, and sometimes it might just not be feasible for somebody to actually, do that. Stu, we did close down public comment. Technically you are at this point.
So you got 3 acres. Your average lateral field of 2,400 square feet takes about 150 by 150. That's 22,000 square feet, basically. That's about a half acre. So you have your lateral field with about a half acre. You have your house with about a half acre. That, on a 3 acre lot, that leaves about 2 acres for your livestock. So that should answer her question. So you'd have about 2 acres, not including lateral field, for your livestock to run on. So you should be good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Stu.
So this is first reading, right? I mean,
Correct. Yeah. This is first reading, but we wanted to get, you know,
I'm kind of taking Corey's thought, very few number of 3+ acre lots. So this seems to me like an ordinance that's going to benefit a few with potential larger impact on the neighbors who are not going to take advantage of this. I mean, I think the negative impact, that's why getting it out there and hearing some feedback, it's going to negatively impact more people potentially than it's going to positively impact people.
Well, it's the people too who they have no idea it's about to impact them. Say we're not expecting a cow next door.
correct. And so I reached out to the citizen that actually talked to me about this originally and just asked her thoughts. And I brought up the conditional use permit. They said, well, it's not ideal, but we'd be fine with a conditional use permit if we had to go and ask that. So that is one way to protect the neighbors, because the conditional use permit requires notification.
Right.
And then it goes through the planning commission. The neighbors can come into the planning commission and voice their opinion. And then based on that, then the planning commission will either approve or deny that conditional use permit. So that's why I brought that side of it up, that is kind of
What's the downside of doing it that way?
just that you have to go through those extra steps for those citizens.
So is it for every new animal, or are you allowed, like, so if I had a horse on my 3 acres, like if my horse passed away and I got a new horse, would I have to go for a new conditional use permit, or do I get one head of horse?
Well,
Hey, this is the topic. This is the topic. You put it on the agenda.
I don't think it'd be one head of horse. I think it'd be one horse.
Yeah. You're talking livestock though, so the plural just comes natural.
Wow, these get interesting. But yeah, I mean, I think you can write it however you want. I mean, Glenn, correct me if I'm wrong. If we're right,
Yeah.
It's not a change in the zoning. So if that person then leaves, it's just like we do with the Airbnbs and things like that. It's not permanent. It's a temporary permit.
But what I mean is it
Yeah, so if
like, hey, that used to be a spotted horse and now it's brown.
well,
you know,
it depends on how
They didn't get their new conditional use
depends on
permit.
the
Okay.
permit, So you could
we go out and stamp the horse,
Yeah.
conditionally approved.
Get a Bolton City brand on it.
I mean, that's a good question. Are you going to require, are you just going to make a conditional use permit around this ordinance that lists a whole range of livestock? Or do you have to come in, if I want to go from horses to pigs? Or do you just have the,
Yeah.
I think it'd be however the council wished to draw up that ordinance to outline that process. And I would say, I mean, based on the discussion tonight, is just have them put on what livestock, on the permit, what livestock they want to have.
Right.
So that way the neighbors knew when they came in for the conditional use.
but then, to Corey's point, you couldn't change it. Because that's what you're using, you're.
You could apply for a new conditional use permit, yeah, to change it.
I kind of agree with Scott, Corey and Scott that I love animals, don't get me wrong. And I just wouldn't want to live next to a bunch of goats or pigs or a cow. I grew up with pigs on our farm, and it wasn't a pretty sight at all, or smell. So I'm kind of leaning on the no side of this.
Even on a conditional use permit basis?
Yes.
What's our current Chickens excluded here. What's our policy?
You can have
You
chicken.
can have chickens,
Chickens
but you
are
can't have roosters.
No roosters.
There was a
What's our
rooster.
enforcement on that?
Yeah, I'm
Well,
pretty sure there's plenty of roosters in town from what I hear.
I was gonna say, 2 doors down from us, that rooster was crowing every morning,
That's Glenn.
6 o'clock.
Glenn doesn't get up that early.
Yeah, so, what are you gonna do? Rat out your neighbor and say, hey, you need to come
You just did.
take their rooster?
Very publicly.
It was hypothetical. Hypothetical. All right. Moving on.
But I think to Julie's point, you bend it a little bit. We already have people having roosters in town. It sounds like so. I mean, you bend it a little bit, and then it's like, well, they allow 2 animals. Why not? I'll fudge it with 3 or 4.
That's the enforcement question.
Well, what about when
Right.
they have a baby?
You know,
Right.
You can
Or
make,
2 or 3?
you can make any
They're pigs, yeah.
requirement you want. If you don't enforce it, it's useless.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have to think about the enforcement piece of all this as well. And
Sounds like Terry said.
He said he'd go wrangle them. I guess I kind of land on the side that if it was a conditional use permit and the neighbors, I'll be honest, in committee originally I pushed back on Glenn a little bit on this. I did.
I did too.
But I'm coming around to the thought of it just because I do understand that it could have a more negative impact than a positive impact to the neighbors and it affect more of them. So that is kind of one side of it that I didn't really think of because in my head I was thinking, well, if you live on 3 acres, you probably already live next to rural property anyway. So, that was where my mindset was during the committee. But I think if you applied for a conditional use permit, that's opportunity for the neighbors to come in and give their opinion, and if they're okay with it, and I don't know. That's just my thought. Again, I go back to I go up to the Douglas County Fair every year and see those kids holding those sheep and doing all that stuff, and it looks cool. I never did that as a kid, and my kids have never done that, but I like the idea of it, and I like the work that those kids put into it. I just don't like the idea that if you don't have land out in Douglas County that costs $15,000 an acre, that you can't provide that to your kids. So that's
Yeah. I was originally opposed to the conditional use permit, but I see your point that, it's, the neighbors should get to have a say. You living in town, then, you don't necessarily expect for, a horse to pop up next door. So I'm in total agreement going that route. But I also just want to remind you guys, we're talking about, maybe 8 houses in town, and there might be 2 of those that decide to actually get some kind of livestock.
How many of those 4-H kids live in town?
I mean, that's what we don't know. They can't have any animals right now.
I know. So, they're all living on a farm, so they can have all
But
the
that doesn't mean that
animals they want.
kids that live in town don't want to be able to do that either.
Well,
So.
we don't know that either.
No.
Okay.
I guess would the council at least be open to us working on an ordinance in committee that requires a conditional use permit and see what that kind of looks like? Because that's not something that we found in any of the ordinances. So,
Sure.
Okay,
all right, that's the feedback we wanted.
got it.
So, all right. Next, council committee reports, budget and finance. Scott.
yeah, we did meet. Couple of topics. We're still working on the rates for 2025 to bring to the council. And we're still on electric right now. And it looks like from where we're at right now that we still have about a 25% gap between our rate as it is today and where it needs to be to meet the expense forecast for 2025. So what we asked Ben and Baker Tilly to come back with is, as we've seen before, if you continue to eat into if you continue to not take in as much as you're spending, you're eating into your reserve, which we've been doing, and we're out of reserve. So the question is, we asked him to bring back is, okay, how do we, he put that 25%, that gets us back to where our policy is on the reserve next year. So we'd be there next year, and then normal increases after that. So we'd have to present some options around what if we got back to our policy in 2 years and in 3 years, what would those rate increases need to be? And what would our reserves be in those scenarios? So he's going to bring that back to the committee, and we'll bring that to the council and have that discussion and figure out, what kind of plan we want to have going forward on the electric rates. Any questions? Did I leave anything out on that?
No, I think you hit it all.
The other thing we talked about, because there are some deadlines looming on, as you guys know, on our purchase power agreements, GRDA being the big one, currently 3 megawatts that we're buying. They're telling us they want a decision this month, but worst case by the end of the year about what we're going to do with that contract. So once you make that decision, it kind of sets you down a path of, if you just renew, for the 3 megawatts, you heard KMEA talk to us about, they recommended 2. Once you make that decision, it kind of limits what you can do elsewise. And so solar is, obviously something that's growing in communities quite substantially. And as the storage starts coming down, the cost of storage, it gets even more attractive where, the big thing with solar is it's only good during the day or when the sun's shining. The technology around batteries is starting to get to where there's some cities actually starting to put in solar storage to where you bank it during sunlight hours and you use it when they're not. So, but those are long range. You got to make a commitment to go do that, and you got to figure out how you're going to go do that. And that gets problematic when you have to make a decision on your purchase power contracts by the end of the year, because we certainly don't want to go in. They're going to lock us up for 20 years. So these are 20+ year decisions on these contracts. So what we need to do, what we talked in the committee, was coming up with kind of a proposal around if we wanted to grow our community solar to pick a number, 3 megawatts additional. How would we do that? What would be required? What would be the timing of all that? What would happen if we don't buy enough? GRDA, which drops off in 26.
Yes.
Correct.
So after that, you better have, your ability to buy power, through a contract and or through the wholesale market, which we currently do to a small degree. So it would then require you, if you don't have your solar field up yet, that you're going to now have a bigger chunk that you're going to have to go out on the wholesale market to go do. So I think what the committee want to do is just bring forward some options that the council could look at and try to decide, do we really want to go solar? And as Corey mentioned, there's a long-term benefit in that from a cost perspective, potentially. But if you don't start, you'll never get it. You're just going to ride along with everybody else on the KMEA contracts and whatever they negotiate. So we're going to have to do some work here and put some in front of the council to either say, yes, we want to try to go do this, something, or no, let's just sign up with our current providers, for the next 20 years and be good. I'll let you guys expound on any of that.
No, I think you covered it pretty good. It's just, for me, the caution, it's the risk reward, so let's say time runs out on GRDA. We currently get 3 megawatts from them, and we have the opportunity to go for 3 more. We reduce it to 1 and play our chances on the open market while we wrestle around with this solar, project. I think it's just from this council, we just have to have the commitment, if we do decide to go forward with expanding solar, that we kind of cross that off. And I think that kind of it's kind of a strategic planning question, I guess, that we maybe need to make more discussion around. But I think you have to commit to that first. And I personally would. I've expressed it. I think with the way technologies in the storage, the battery side of things is getting better and better. And some communities are even affording to store their own solar right now, and that's something that we weren't really seeing a couple of years ago. And it's, that's one thing that I can confidently say is going to keep getting cheaper and cheaper, I feel. So I think 20 years, you have to ask yourself, where do you want to be 20 years down the road? Do you want to be having no equity in any of your own infrastructure and energy production and still renewing contracts? Or do you want to look back 20 years and say, wow, we actually have 7 megawatts out of 14 at our peak that we're able to produce on our own and store now? So I think it's a long-term conversation, and I hate when you have to make long-term conversations under the gun of a deadline, but that's kind of life in government. So that's just all the more I want to say. Didn't really say anything new.
I think great points. I think it's going to require a work session as we bring forward all of the risks and, and options to say, and the big one we talked about earlier is land acquisition. Where are you going to put it? That if you can't figure that out, it's a moot point, right? That's almost like the first thing you got to decide. Do we have a viable option for, for a space to put, pick a number of megawatts you want to put. So I would suggest we have a workshop around this.
And yeah, I would probably have to do the second Tuesday of December. Would be the next. With Thanksgiving coming up.
The deadline.
With the
end of the year.
Yeah.
Are we going to have another strategic planning work session anytime soon? Because it ties in with that.
That's what it would be. You call it what you want.
Yeah, it is. You can have.
If you're trying to get us to lead it, forget it. I'm on to you.
Darn.
I think it's the CDC. But no, it's what it is. It's affordability.
It's the affordability
We
piece.
talk about how green do we want to be and that sort of thing.
Right.
It's not heavily in our strategic plan, but from a cost perspective, that's where I think we have a chance to be a little more affordable energy-wise.
Down the
5,
road.
10, 15
Yeah.
down the road, than we do today.
That's something we've talked about a lot in committee, is that solving the affordability problems, there are always long-term solutions. There's not one. If there was an affordability lever we could pull tomorrow, we'd do it. You have to think down the road, and you have to think about where you're going to be in 20 years and what percentage you're going to be buying from either contracts or from the open market on the electric side of things. And if you can produce the more of your own that you can produce, and then hope technology keeps going the way it does with storage, and put yourself in a good position 20 years down the road to where you're lowering electric bills.
All right. Next meeting's Friday at 7:45.
What about the last Tuesday of this month?
That would be right before Thanksgiving.
I can't do the 10th.
I try not to schedule anything on those weeks, just because people travel schedule, and we got.
Yeah, we moved our
take away from the staff.
The 10th, that whole week I'll be
It doesn't
in the
have to be on a
hospital.
Tuesday.
No, it doesn't.
That's true.
Why don't you guys come up with dates that work for your schedule and just send them to Amra, and then I'll get with Amra over the next week and we'll come up with a date.
We need a little bit of time to put the scenarios together around, are we gonna model a 3 megawatt addition? What would that look like cost wise? What would that look like?
And that's why I thought.
We have budget Friday.
Yeah.
We have budget Friday.
Yeah, we do.
Well, I thought December 10th would be a good time because that gives about a month to get.
Second Tuesday.
Yeah. So that's
I'll be in the
before
hospital that
final-
day.
Huh?
I'll be in the hospital that day,
Hospital on the 10th. Okay.
10th, 11th, 12th.
Okay.
But are you suggesting, Scott, we use this Friday's budget meeting as a sort of staging ground for?
Well, we've got other things we got to get done.
I know.
At that meeting, I just don't think we'll have time to. We can ask for Glenn and Ben to go get us information that we think's relevant to putting this in front of the council. If that makes sense, Glenn. Yes.
Didn't we go over some options of this before? Can't we bring those up? And
Man, that's been a while.
It has,
Yeah, it's been a long time.
but it seems
but it's still, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that they'll try to scratch that back up and find it, and if not, we'll redevelop it.
The prices have obviously changed dramatically. Technology's changed, and Glenn's pretty plugged into our acquisition by cities. So I know you've got a lot of reference cases about cities that are putting it in currently and costs and
There's a number even in our power pool right now.
yeah.
They're going that way. It's kind of a mixed bag. Some are going to probably go for the larger solar project, but a lot of them are looking at the community solar now. Some of them already have it and they're adding on to it. Some are doing with the storage, some not. So it's a real mixed bag right now. There's a lot of incentives for it out there right now. So that's kind of tilting the playing field toward that. And if those were not
Go
out
away, I'm sure as it becomes more popular, there'll be less need to get cities to go that direction. So
prices have fallen on some of it, not all of it. Just depends on where you're sourcing it from right now. So
Let's get a proposal done, and we'll start working down that road, and we'll come up with a time for a work session that works for everybody. That work?
yeah,
You good, Scott?
yeah. Friday, 7:30 a.m., second floor, City Hall.
All right. Community development, Corey.
Yeah, we met last Monday, had 2 agenda items. One was the common consumption ordinance, which we just handled with Dakota's revisions and passed tonight. The other topic, the rolling topic, is the food truck ordinance, which we kind of polished up the remaining things we wanted to change there. And now that the common consumption ordinance is done, we'll be sending those over to Dakota for a revisal and bring it back to council. We did we change the meeting? It's on the 18th now, right? Whereas I think before it was going to be on the 25th.
Look,
It is on the 18th because we.
Fourth would be a.
I've got the 18th.
Okay, so I think that did deviate from maybe it was the 25th originally, but yeah. So next meeting will be the 18th, 4 o'clock, second floor, City Hall.
Okay. Public safety, Susan.
We have not met. We meet next on November 12th at 4 o'clock.
All right. Public works, Julie.
Yeah, we haven't met either, and the next meeting is November 14th at 9 o'clock in the morning.
All right. Strategic planning, Scott.
We have not met. And no plans. Sounds like we might be getting a work session. That's part of the strategic planning. Sorry. Yeah, no meetings planned at this point.
City administrator, staff comments. Dakota, do you want to go? Because Jason's here for our executive session. You have some celebration to do based on the election results. So, and Jason can feel you. Okay. Okay. Any other council comments?
I don't have anything.
I just want to congratulate our city attorney on his election results tonight. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Dakota. Thank you.
Good job.
Okay, so with that, we do need an executive session. Jason, 30 minutes, is that enough? Let's do 30. Okay. For 30 minutes for attorney-client privilege with the city council, mayor, city administrator, possibly the city attorney, and Jason.
I move to accept that motion.
For 30 minutes to adjourn back into here at 9:05. Been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed nay. Motion passes. We are adjourned. Whoever you want to choose between the two of them.
He did.
You can arm wrestle.
Sorry.
I almost grabbed my chair.
Those days are over. For now.
Huh? same people. So I'll entertain a motion to go back into executive session until, let's call it 9:26 with the city council, the mayor, city administrator, and outside legal counsel.
9:16?
9:16, I'm sorry,
So
9:16.
moved.
Been moved. Moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes.
mentioned
1 minute.
about not putting the tables away last time, and then we ran out.
TJ's thing.
Help you put the chairs away. We understand, like, wow,
I think I did.
who did all the chairs? Because it was that late night. I think I just went.
I think I helped. I think Corey helped too.
No, I got out of Dodge.
Oh no, you went and played the golf simulator.
Did play the golf simulator.
Yeah, I remember some guys playing golf.
It was great.
Yeah, it was.
Never played.
We can't do it tonight while y'all are in there.
Never played golf at 10 o'clock at night. This is it. We're done.
I thought I saw two.
There was. That was just in
You said
case.
we didn't need executive
Yeah.
session.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
No, we're done. 9:16. I'll call the meeting back to order and entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Done with that.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.